As we have been doing over the past few weeks, we've been getting you sorted out with those mortgages, letting you know all the details and all that you need to have as you go forward for it. Of course, Crystal Howell is here, our internal auditor. We were talking today about finalizing what needs to happen as far as these mortgages are concerned. What do you need to have in those final stages? Good morning, Crystal.
Good morning.
Morning.
I was there looking at your earlier clip if you shopping, and I wonder if after the chef is done, if you've learned how to prepare anything. He comes every Monday, right?
Yeah, he comes every Monday. uh, what needs to happen is that I need to employ him Monday to Friday at my house. That's a whole other situation and a whole other set of payment.
We just work it into the budget.
But that's
There
what I'm
you
saying.
go.
No, how will I work it into the budget when I'm trying to get this mortgage going and looking at all of the final requirements and then maintenance planning as well?
Yes. The maintenance planning is very important.
Which people don't do.
People don't. And then
Maybe
No, I don't do maintenance
till
planning.
you realize you should.
yeah, the finalizing the mortgage is the key because everybody wants to get off of bridging and be able to move on to just making those payments and settling into the routine. So the contract that you have usually will outline what you need to do to finalize your mortgage, and you don't want some of these things to be a surprise. Even persons who are in the know and who are accustomed and used to these things often are surprised by the things they have to do to close off the mortgage. So some of the things that you may have to look at is getting a certificate of compliance from Town and Country Planning. And this is one of the things where it's a little ticklish because you're dependent on somebody else and their process for you to close off your mortgage. And until that happens, you might be sitting down in bridging. So you want to make sure you get those applications off in a timely manner so that when you get your response that you have everything in place, making sure you're aware of what they're looking for, because you don't want that they come, do their inspection, you fail, and then you have to go
Wow.
through the process all over again. And the time period for waiting could take some time, some weeks, up to sometimes months.
And it could have cost you money too.
Exactly.
Right.
So even fees aside, you also have the bridging interest that you're paying where you may have finished everything else that the mortgage department wants you to do, but you're here sitting waiting on this.
This is a process you really must tick all of the boxes. You can't leave out any.
Have a checklist.
No,
Have
you-
somebody like her around. Yeah.
Read your contracts, and again, if you don't understand, there are lawyers who are there who can explain to you, your mortgage officer can explain to you. Have your check boxes, have your timelines, have those discussions so that you're not caught unprepared.
The timelines, though, Crystal, because we are not professionals, we are relying on professionals to tell us how long such and such a, time will take, and sometimes those approximations are ridiculous.
I agree. And I do think that we as the professionals need to do more to make sure that the customer is aware of these things because, and it's not just this profession, but I find in general people assume that because they know the process very well, the customer should know the process. And that's often not the case. You're the one that is trained in this area, you're used to it, and you take it for granted that other persons are now coming in and they're unaware. And especially for a process like this where there's so much to think about, you want to make sure that persons don't feel as though it's an overwhelming process or they come out of it feeling as though I would never do this again because it was so much that I did not think about. And this is not just for persons who took my path, but even just buying a ready done house.
Yeah.
Sometimes you wonder, how did they expect me to know to do all of these things, to get the quantity severe, to go and get this, to go and get that?
And all
It's a
of those
lot.
things cost money.
Yes.
And then there is the part that Peter was so surprised about, the maintenance that
Yes.
people tend to forget. So rope that into the budget as we look at this mortgage and those final requirements.
So anyone who has moved from renting a house to owning knows that you've taken for granted how wonderful it was when your landlord took care of all the maintenance. You have a toilet that isn't working, you have lawn to be cut, there is a lot to think about that we usually do not budget for. So you have, let's say your mortgage is $1,500 a month. and you have maxed out to yourself, and then you realize grass has to cut every week. And if it gets overgrown, you get mosquitoes and it's uncomfortable. You might think it's a new house, but you still have to make sure you treat it for termites ever so often. You have to have your house cleaned if you're going to do that yourself or if you're going to get help, because, you know, some persons legitimately are so busy, they need to be able to get someone to come and help them around the house.
So you have to put this now into
The budget.
The mortgage as well, the maintenance costs.
I won't put it into the mortgage, but you definitely need to
your
put a set of
budgeting.
your salary aside for this type of
Walls
maintenance.
crack.
So when you
Correct.
got
You plant a tree too
$1,500.
close to the wall, and all of a sudden the roots go under it and
Wow.
Yeah.
lift it, crack. You know, stuff like that.
Those things do happen. So
So-
there are some persons who would make sure they cut down the trees because they know that that can cause, if you have built your home too close to the tree, it could cause cracks in your foundation, which can cause bigger problems.
Yeah.
So it's a lot to think about. How often you roofs that leak,
I
because
remember the guy doing a roof 15 years ago said it will last 15 years, 14. Yeah, you know?
You
So
mentioned
there are things like that you have to
consider.
save for each month, I guess.
Yeah.
So when you're going for the mortgage, you mentioned 1,500 and being maxed out. You probably should make sure that 1,500, and we're just using that figure arbitrarily.
yes, it's a very arbitrary figure.
Okay. Yeah, so make
Okay.
sure you don't max out and probably put some of the savings under, not the mortgage necessarily, but put aside something for the maintenance costs as well. Crystal, you want to mention something very quickly?
Very quickly, I just also want to make sure persons are aware of insurance, because there are many times that insurance will be a requirement for your mortgage, and you have to know the difference between house insurance, contents insurance, what you're covered for. That also has to be included in your budget, and you should be aware of what it covers before you have to make a claim. So if you had a burglary, what is covered if you had to go and make that claim? Is it just the damage to the home, or are your contents insured? So if somebody came in and stole everything and then you go and you make your claim, did you itemize beforehand the contents that you would like to be covered before you make that claim, before you realize the only thing that's going to be covered is the damage to the property itself?
Wow. So many things to be considered. It's a good thing that we got Crystal here to help you at home know how best to go about dealing with this mortgage. Always thank you, Crystal, for coming and sharing the information with us.